Hey, welcome back to another video. In this video, we're gonna get started with the open world. In particular, we're gonna be doing the interact code so that we can interact with the races and as well as how to travel between the open world, the workshop, and the open world and the dealership. So with that, let's get started. So before we move on, I just want to say that the code in this video is not my own. I found it from a different YouTuber, but it's been a couple months and I couldn't find the original content creator. So if you happen to recognize the code, if y'all can please just drop a comment so I can tag the appropriate creator. And if the original creator happens to see this, you can also drop a comment so I can tag you in the description. So with that, let's get started. Hey, this is a post-recording insert. While recording, I did run into a little bit of a problem. Didn't know if it was something that you guys might encounter as well, but if I did, then I just wanted to make sure that you guys don't encounter the same problem. So the problem I had was when I was trying to spawn in to the workshop spawn point, there was a little bit of a problem in the level blueprint. Apparently, I hadn't connected the execution pin between the spawn exit and the cars to primary parent vehicle. I don't know if this was part of the video or it was something I did while testing, but I had that problem and then I just had to come and connect the execution pin between the two nodes and then the problem was fixed. So if you encounter the same problem, then it's probably because you should come and check this out if it doesn't spawn in properly. But if not that, then if you encounter any other problems, y'all can just leave a comment and I'll try to address them to the best of my abilities. Back to the video. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna move over to the open world. So we'll go content, maps, open world, and then open up this. And then in here, we're gonna go to the content real quick, blueprints, and then in here, we're gonna create a new folder. So right click, new folder. I'm gonna call this blueprint underscore interfaces because we're going to create quite a few of them. So open up this one. And then the other thing that we're going to need is the parent vehicle blueprint. So just open up that one. You don't need the game instance. And then in here, the first blueprint instance we're going to create, right click, and then blueprint interface. And then we'll call this BPI underscore interact. And then open up that. And then we're going to create a new function. We're going to call this the interact. And then we're going to add a single input. This is going to be a pawn, and it is going to be a reference to the parent blueprint. So just BP tutorial. It's going to be an object reference. You want to compile, save, and then you're going to close this. They want to go to content, inputs, the IMC inputs, and then in here we're going to add a new input. So this is going to be, I would need to go to the open real quick, and then right click, inputs, input action. That's going to be the IA underscore interact. And then in here, it's fine. You don't need to do anything in here. Just save this, close that, head back to the IMC. And then the new input we're going to add is the interact. Expand that. And then I'm going to click on the keypad button. I'm going to use enter as my interact button. Then we're going to save that, close that. And then in the parent vehicle, we're just going to find a open space, right click, and then we're going to look for the interact. They will just create the enhanced input event. And then we're going to hold S and then left click, bend the input action. Then we're going to from the started, drag off and connect that to the sequence. And then from the sequence, what we're going to do is we're going to right click and then we're going to get overlapping actors. And then the class filter is going to be of type actor. And then from the overlapping actors, I'm going to drag off and then we're going to look for each loop with break, connect that to the then 0. And then from the array element, I'm going to drag off and then we're going to look for does object implement interface. And then the interface we're going to look for is the BPI intact. Then from the turn, drag off, then we're going to look for a branch. Connect this to the loop body, And then once again, from the array element, we're gonna drag off and then look for the interact, BPI interact, the interact message. Then we're gonna connect that to the true. And then from the pawn, we're gonna drag off and then look for self. And then after the interact, we're gonna drag off from there and then connect this to the for each loop break execution. Then just add a couple redirects just to kind of tidy this up a bit. And then that will be it for the then 0. Then here by the then 1, first thing I'll do is right click and then create a custom event. This custom event, we're going to call this race restart. So this next part of the code is going to be used whenever the player triggers a race event. The race restart we're going to pay with when the player restarts a race, but then apart from that, whenever you start a race for the first time, we also need to run the code, which is the hold the player in position, which we're going to do with keeping the car in neutral, then allow the countdown to play out, and then set the player's gear to 1 afterwards. So from here, we're going to drag in the vehicle movement component, hold control, drag that in, drag off from there, and then we're going to look for set target gear. We're going to keep it at 0 for neutral, connect that to the then 1, drag off from there, add a delay, and then for now I'm going to set this to 3 seconds, and then select the set target gear, Control D to duplicate it, and then we're going to set this to 1, drag off from the vehicle movement component, connect that to the second set target gear by the target, add a couple redirect nodes to tidy it up, and then from the custom event you're going to connect this as well to the first set target gear. So how this is going to work is whenever the player interacts with a race, it's going to trigger the code, which is first going to check if this particular actor does implement the interact blueprint interface. And then once it has checked and it is true, then it's going to then run the next piece of code, which is going to keep the player at 0, run the countdown, and then the player can start the race. And then whenever the player wants to restart, we're then going to trigger this custom event over here that we created, the race restart, so that the same process can happen again. So that is it for this piece of code in the parent vehicle. So we're going to compile, save, head back to the level, head back to content, blueprints, and then in the blueprints folder, we are going to right click, add a new blueprint class. This is going to be of type actor. And then this is going to be the BP underscore workshop. And then we are going to open this up and then just dock this to the top. And then we're going to add a component, which is a box collision. Just add a box collision. And then I'm just going to leave that as is. Next, another thing I'm going to add is a billboard, just so we can see where the box collision is, because once you play the game, the box collision is going to become invisible, and then you won't necessarily know where the spawn point is, not the spawn point, the interact point is. So we're using the billboard as a way to then tell us where it is. So we're just going to leave this as is, and then just modify this a bit, just move it up so it's not completely on the ground. It's just till there. If you want to change the texture for the billboard in the details panel, you can just go down here where it says sprite. It has the image over here. Then you can select the drop down and you can select any of the other actors, other textures you have. If you want to have a custom texture, then you can bring in a PNG image, just the texture, don't have to turn it into a material. And then you can then use that as the custom sprite billboard image for your interact point to travel to the workshop or to the dealership. And then from here, we're going to compile to the event graph. Then we're going to go to the class settings, so we can top. Then we're going to go here by the interfaces, where it says implement interfaces. We're going to add the BPI interact. I'm going to compile that. And then if we check here under interfaces in the my blueprint section, I'm just going to double click on that. And then we're going to bring this up. And then before we proceed further, there is actually something that I forgot that we do need to do in the game instance. So we're just going to go to that real quick. So by the open world, head to the content, blueprints, the game instance, and then in here, just to clarify some things, I want to change some of these booleans here. The workshop one is fine, but then the open world one, we're gonna rename this to race question mark. And then the reason for this is because once we're in the open world, we are going to create two different pause menus. One for when the player is in the race so that you can quit or restart a race. And then the other one when you're just driving around in the open world so that you can go back to the garage if you want to, or just pause the game because you have something to do. And you don't want the normal one when you're just roaming around to have the restart race, resume race, or quit race options available to it. We just wanted to say something like pause, settings, go to garage, for example, right? And then in the when you're in a race, you wanted to say resume race, restart race, or quit race, right? So that's what we're going to do with this one, and then we're gonna select that variable, Control D, and then this one is then the one we're gonna use. We're gonna call this free roam question mark. And then this one is going to replace the open world that we previously had, but this one is also going to be used in the parent vehicle later on when we add the engine sounds, because we don't want the engine sound to play when we are in the garage level or in the dealership because we are spawning in the blueprints there. So what we're going to do is with this code, with this boolean, we are going to tell the code that we are currently not in free roam, so you need to not play the car's engines out until we are back in the free roam. And then the workshop is going to be the one that tells the code where to spawn the player, either at the spawn point for the dealership or at the spawn point for the workshop. So that's all we have to come and do in the game instance. I forgot where to do that. My bad. Compile and save. Then we can close this. And then in the event interact by the BP workshop, we're gonna drag off from there. Actually, before we do that, we need to get the value that we need. So by the event begin play, right click and then get game instance, and then drag off from there, and then cost to BPGI game, connect the execution pin, drag off from there, promote this to a variable, and then now by the event interact, we're going to drag in the as BPGI game, hold control, drag it in, drag off, and then we're going to set workshop question mark. We're going to set this to true because we are moving to the workshop, and then from there drag off and then open level by object reference, which is then going to be the workshop. And then that will be it for the code. I'm gonna compile, save, and then we're gonna head back to the open world, remove the BP workshop, and then we're gonna select it, Control D, and then we're gonna rename this to dealership, and then open up that as well. And then we're just gonna change the code here. So for the workshop, set this to false, and then the level we're opening up is the dealership level. And then that will be it. Compile and save. And then I'm going to change the full body image just so we can know which one is the workshop and which one is the dealership. And then now with that done, we're going to drag both actors into the level. And then we're going to open up the level blueprint. And then what we're going to do in here is we are going to replace the two spheres that we had with the new actors that we just created. So this is the dealership one for me. I changed the billboard sign. So I currently have that one selected. So in the level, just to figure out which one is. So here we go, workshop, false. So that'd be here, sphere 2. Create a reference to BP dealership, and then just replace that with the new one. We can remove this, and then we're gonna compile, back to the level, select the workshop one, back to the level blueprint, right click, create a reference to BP workshop, replace the get actor, compile and save, and then we can remove the two spheres now because we don't need them anymore. And then what I want to do is I'm just going to make these two a little bit bigger as well. So I'm just going to do that real quick. So now that I have sized them correctly, just so we have more real estate when it comes to interacting with the boxes, I'm gonna save everything and then gonna close the level blueprint. Then we're gonna head over to content, maps, workshop, open up the workshop level because we're gonna test it from here before so we can test it properly, play the level, and then we're going to exit the workshop, make sure we spawn in at the right place. So exit workshop, yes. I'm pretty sure you saw that there seemed like there wasn't anything in the level just now when I played. That's because I forgot to turn off the hidden in game for the sprite, the billboard. So just uncheck that and then just do this for the other one as well. Because I've made a couple changes to the interact boxes and also moved the billboards up a bit so you can see them a bit more clearly. So we're gonna try this again. Maps, workshop, open up the workshop level, exit the workshop. Yes. Okay, so we spawned at the wrong one because this is the dealership. And then that is the workshop. So let's just go check the code. We're gonna close this, but let's see if this actually works. I'm gonna go this one. I'm gonna park here, press enter. So we've been spun back into the dealership. We're back here again. So I'm just gonna go check out the code with the exit workshop. What's going on there? Just close this real quick. And then we're gonna go content, widgets, workshop, workshop level. That's the graph. And then, oh, we never actually set the exit so that it is set to true. Actually, no, this is the wrong place. It's supposed to be in the exit pop-up, not in the level. So here we go. Here we go. See, so here we never defined that we are actually in the workshop when we leave. So to fix that real quick, just gonna go here by the event construct, right click, I'm gonna get game instance, drag off from there, cost to BBGI game, connect the execution pin, drag off from the SBBGI game, promote this to a variable, and then by the yes, just drag out the open up, and then we are going to drag in the SBBGI game, hold control, drag it in, drag off, and then set workshop to true, and then connect that, and then compile and save. And then we also need to go through this for the dealership. Just gonna go and verify this. So in the workshop, widgets, dealership, it should be in the purchase pop-up. Then we're gonna check. Okay, so we did define it here as workshop, not true. Then we're just gonna check in the back, which should be dealership, back button. We also defined it as workshop, not true. Okay, so in the dealership, we did this, but not in the workshop. But now we have done it. It has been resolved. We can close that and then close this as well. Then we're going to save everything. Then we're going to try it again. So we're going to play the level, exit the workshop. Yes. So now we spawn back into the level at the correct location by the workshop. So we're just going to try out the dealership, make sure this one works as well. So enter. We have the dealership. Then we're going to press back. And then we get spawned back by the dealership level. So we can see that the code does in fact work. We can travel between the levels and come back without any problems. So that does it for this video, and until the next one.